My husband thought he was so clever. He thought he could hide his mistress, his lies, even his own infertility. He didn't know I was watching him the whole time. This isn't a story about heartbreak, it's about revenge. And tonight I'm going to tell you exactly how I destroyed him. I've never really understood cheating. It's a high-risk, low-reward thing to do, but some people seem to like it. For example, my husband Frank Spencer smelled like smoke, which was the first indicator that something was wrong. Frank doesn't smoke. His social circle is made up of well-educated professionals, the kind of people who wouldn't do that. In something as short-sighted as smoking, which is a short-term pleasure that doesn't think about the long-term effects, that night, he said he was seeing someone who didn't smoke either. But when Frank got home, there was a faint, unmistakable smell of smoke. A hint of cigarette smoke on him, but the strange part was that it wasn't on his coat, on his jeans, or his undershirt. What kind of situation would make someone take off their clothes? The only thing that comes to mind after sex is a cigarette. They take off their clothes and light up a cigarette. It was 10:30 p.m., and the bathroom wasn't far from the door of our house. I was in front of the mirror going through my nightly skincare routine when Frank came home. That's when I peeked out and said hello to him. A smile and a "hi, honey" from more than a meter away made the sharp smell of smoke hit me. Frank, you can't miss the grimace on my face if you don't smoke even a little bit. Started complaining almost like a preventative defense. Can you imagine that people are still selfish enough to smoke? The management should have kicked them out of the restaurant, I said, as I stepped out of the bathroom to let them go. Frank took a shower and took off all his clothes. He has never been shy about these things after all. We've been married for 10 years and haven't had any kids. He's used to his freedom, so he threw his clothing in the washing machine, and all I had to do was add detergent and click the button when I got into the shower. It was simple, but earlier that morning I had thrown in a new denim shirt to wash because denim always bleeds the first time. I sighed and took everything out of the washing machine. I started putting the items back in the washing machine one at a time, giving my mind a chance to roam. And then, as if I were under some kind of spell, I lowered my head and sniffed Frank's jacket and pants. There was almost any smell on the shirt, so it wasn't someone else smoking near him. I sniffed again, this time closer to the collar and sleeves, still nothing. Then there was only one item left, the underwear. I didn't even have to lean in, the smoky smell hit me right away. My palm froze, gripping the fabric, and I turned toward the restroom. My belly sank, it wasn't right. Later in bed, he was eager, hungry, even like a man who hadn't touched a woman in weeks. Married guys can be excited for weeks, but this kind of quick excitement, they either had a lot of pent-up desire that they were keeping back, or they were feeling guilty and attempting to hide something. When we were done, he laid back, smirking through heavy breaths and running his palm over his stubbled chin. "What's wrong with you tonight?" The mood was bad because I had a rough day at work. I pulled my head away from the crook of his arm and sighed that I had another divorce case. Frank smiled and said, "I don't get it. Why do men cheat?" He said, "Come on, don't be so black and white about it." His voice was too casual, and that chuckle of his was so forced that it made me even more suspicious. He added that they probably feel like they're missing something in their lives, so they try to prove they still have it. Not me, though. I've got it all. A great life and a great wife. To make his point, he reached over and tapped my shoulder with a playful, leering grin. The passion felt staged, too much effort to seem natural. I played along and gave him a sexy smile back. Half an hour later, his snores filled the room under the soft glow of the bedroom lamp. I watched his sleeping face, the deepening creases around his mouth, which was slightly open and making a constant spray of brown blotches all over his skin. This man, so familiar, felt suddenly like a stranger. Frank is the owner of a prestigious newspaper. He's at the top of the media world, and his status is almost untouchable. The media and PR people nearly worship the ground he walks on, but even with all the attention and power. But as he loves to say, the more successful a man gets, the more he has to protect his reputation. I've never agreed with that idea. It's not rational. When I make it huge, I'm going to travel from Thailand to Amsterdam and sleep with as many people as I can. Mark on Eurasia's success in protecting one's reputation, and the fact that I brushed the back of my palm against Frank's cheek made me think about it. I touched Frank's cheek with my palm and quietly uttered his name. "Frank," I whispered, "answer me." A few years ago, I might have put his pillow in the right place, wrapped the blanket around him, and fallen asleep while I listened to him snore. Now I'm resting next to him. I felt like I was parked next to an ancient steam train that blew its whistle every 2 seconds. I slipped on a robe and picked up Frank's phone. As a senior partner at a legal firm, I've handled innumerable cases of cheating. Going through his phone is almost like muscle memory at this point. First, I turned off his phone so that no incriminating sounds could be heard. Then I entered his passcode. The screen lit up right away. I tiptoed to the study's social media accounts, which are a waste of time most of the time. I had genuine proof, so I went right to settings, then privacy, and finally location services. From there, system services, and eventually important places. There was a map on the screen, followed by line after line of location history everywhere he'd been. It was all there in perfect detail, when he got there and how long he stayed. My fingers shook as I scrolled through, a mix of dread and anticipation twisted in my chest, making my heart speed up. Then I noticed, at point 42 and street number 106, Frank had been there almost every day, including tonight, according to his phone. He had been there until 7 p.m. to 9:40 p.m. During that time, his location didn't alter at all. Unless he had lost his phone, there was only one explanation. Frank was there too. He lives in the east end of the city, while his office is in the west end. The location was near the south by the waterfront, the kind of place that doesn't explain a smoky scent on someone's underwear. It screamed something else entirely. Out of curiosity, I searched the address online. New buildings, high property value, ocean vistas, and floor-to-ceiling windows. The area had no real restaurants, and there was no real connection to Frank. Frank said he would meet me tonight, although he didn't live there either. I had what I needed, but I still read his messages. Frank is too proud to do things like delete chat histories. He thinks that erasing messages is somehow beneath him. He was sure that the conversations were still going on, but women are strange when it comes to going through their husband's phone. It's like they unlock a superhuman ability to speed read and ignore the endless stream of "baby," "miss you," "love you most." I focused on the talks from the last month. When I was done reading, I snapped pictures of every damning thing that was said against me during a 10-minute conversation. Message by message, I saved it. Then I turned off the phone and walked back to the bedroom as quietly as I could, putting it back where I found it, just over Frank. I felt a strange sensation of detachment. There he was, sound asleep, with the deep creases around his mouth, the little gray around his temples, and the way his chest rose and fell in a steady beat. I murmured to Frank, "Do you even know what you're doing?" The year I met Frank, I was a sophomore in college and he was a senior. I was an ordinary law student while he was a star in the philosophy department. Instructors acclaimed him as having ontic talent. They thought he genuinely was brilliant. His pieces in the university newspaper were crisp and thought-provoking. He was smart, articulate, and observant. In the ivory tower of academia, one halo of brilliance could cover up all the flaws. Frank became the most sought-after person on campus for dating, while I was completely invisible. Even though he was the one who wanted me, everyone else thought I had gone way too far. At the time, I believed it too. Frank made me feel like I was in love on every birthday and holiday. He planned big things for us. Even after we got married, he still did romantic things for me. Over time, I opened my own law firm and became what people called a successful boss. My income slowly grew, eventually catching up to Frank's. The whispers of me marrying up slowly disappeared. Frank never spoke much. I could tell it bothered him when I told him not to have kids. He smiled and said, "Okay," and then he did. Of course, you'll always be the baby of this family, but the nice remarks ceased when his parents pressed him about children. He'd occasionally snap and take it out on me with sharp comments. I started tiptoeing around to save our marriage, and I was careful to protect his ego, even though I made more money than he did. I never told him that I still made less money, and I let him think that. I assumed that handling things this way would keep our relationship going for a long time, but life is dictated by Murphy's Law. The more cautious you are, the bigger the disaster when things fall apart. The perk of running a law firm is access to resources and connections. Right now, there is a copy of a photo on my desk. Frank's name is on a leasing agreement, a 1-year lease, paid 3 months up front. Adjacent to it were images of Frank going in and out of an apartment with a young woman. Frank was cheating on me with a college girl, Selena. The images showed her with wavy chestnut hair that sparkled with a subtle rose tinge in the sun. Her grin lit up the room. She wore a sleeveless top, a skirt that hugged her body, and strappy shoes and high heels that made her half a head taller than Frank. Frank stood beside her, looking every bit the successful man he thought he was. He had a vaguely smug look on his face. Her name was Selena, and she had just graduated and was working as an editorial assistant at Frank's newspaper as an intern. This was a great situation for a superior and a subordinate. It was a silly entanglement, but I had to stop it. The supervisor is predatory and the intern is ignorant. I stared at the pictures, my mind racing until a notice brought me back to reality. I had a meeting at the office today, and the paper might go home late. Frank sent it. I looked at the pictures of the confident man and then back at my phone, where a single dismissive sentence summed up his entire interaction with me. Disgust bubbled up inside me. There was no shame, no fear of getting discovered, just arrogance that I would confront him. I glanced at my phone for a long time before replying with a simple, "Okay." The apartment with a view of the ocean was around 20 kilometers away. It took me half an hour to go home from work. By then, the sun had fallen and the complex was mostly empty. It was dark, with only a few lit windows, which meant there weren't many people living there yet. I was watching the road, which was still pitch black, so I stayed in the car and read a new set of laws that I hadn't had time to read yet. Being a lawyer means you're always looking for new information, and I was only halfway through. The third part got me angry because I thought about how my study schedule for the evening would be messed up. Do grown-ups insist on doing things that generate needless bother for others? After around 30 minutes, the window finally illuminated. I put my book down, locked the car, and went upstairs. I knocked on the door 3 times, then 3 more times. I let myself hope, and then the door opened. A young woman was in front of me, looking just as she looked in the images. And just like that, any chance of denying it was gone. Her bangs framed her face, and her nose and deep, gentle eyes were beautiful. Her makeup was flawless, and in person, she had a glow of youth that no picture could capture. It completely broke the illusion. She was wearing a pajama set and slippers on her feet. Her cloying, sickly sweet perfume hovered in the air. Her choices, her consumption, said a lot about who she was, a gorgeous girl living in such simple circumstances. I nearly felt terrible for her when she saw me. She froze. Her carefully planned expression faltered, and her face turned pale. I smiled and stepped inside without waiting for her to say anything. The living room was big, at least 30 square meters. The furniture was far nicer than what she was wearing, which made things feel strange. On the coffee table was an open Tiffany box. Inside was a double heart pendant necklace, the typical silver and diamond design. I could tell right away that it had just been tried on because of the blue design. Selena is worth a lot to Frank. Tiffany is pricey, but this one is worth it. The necklace is one of their entry-level pieces, not so expensive that I made a slow trip around the room before stopping at the floor-to-ceiling window. From there, I could see the ocean, bordered by streetlights stretching into the distance. A view like this may be calming after a long day at work. Frank must have loved standing here and taking in the view while doing whatever he did. The concept made me laugh. Why am I empathizing with him? Frank came from the restroom a moment later, and the sight of me stopped him in his tracks. His face gave him away for a brief moment, but then he forced himself to calm down. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. He was wearing a dark blue robe that went past his knees. His damp leg hair stuck to his skin in irregular clumps. How nice of him to wear a robe for the new female, I thought. He often lounges around with nothing but a towel, or sometimes not even that, but for her, he kept a layer of mystery. Frank approached, his face carefully composed, but when he opened his mouth to speak, the words wouldn't come. His jaw worked soundlessly for a minute before he averted his head, as if the issue was beneath him to explain. The girl, nonetheless, had no such hesitation. She came forward, speaking for him with startling assurance. "Olivia," she said. The sound of my name shocked me for a second. She definitely knew who I was. I caught her gaze, and for the first time, I saw it. Defiance. She wasn't scared. She was challenging me. I stared back without flinching and didn't say anything. I didn't react. I just held her gaze until her composure cracked. She squirmed in discomfort. I finally gave in and ended the negotiations after my hands had been squirming awkwardly for a while. Dominating the room early is crucial to a quick win. Selena finally left and went back to the kitchen. When she came back, she had a fruit dish with her. She offered it in a gentle voice. "Would you like some apple?" As she held out a freshly peeled apple with an air of indifference, I completely disregarded her because I wasn't there for her. My target was Frank, who was 10 minutes late. Frank still said nothing, and Selena's performance dragged on, switching between Act 1 and Act 2 of her one-woman show. Eventually, Frank gathered the strength to break the stillness. He started to sound stiff after the meeting because of problems at work. She asked if I could help figure things out since it was the kind of justification only someone used to lying would provide. Weak, manufactured, and he said it anyway. I stopped acting tough because Frank's excuse was so weak. Instead of arguing, I lowered my guard, tilted my head, and murmured quietly, "All right." Frank froze, caught off surprise that I repeated myself. "All right," I said again. "We've been married long enough for him to know me." He knew I never spoke without cause, and now his thoughts must have been spinning. "Someone had told me they saw you and a young girl pulling at each other in the street," I said. My voice was shaking a little. I told them I didn't believe them. I said Frank and I are fine and love each other, but now I'm crying. I wasn't the kind of woman who cried in front of people, but before I could stop them, they started to fall. Seeing me like this must have really shaken Frank. His confident look faded and he moved back closer, hoping to console me. "Dear, let's go home," he murmured gently. "We can talk." Selena shifted uncomfortably when she heard that word, sweetheart. Her face showed that she was unnerved. Frank is a typical patriarch, and I had planned to make him feel uneasy. Eager to protect the weak and scorn the strong, he had always felt the need to shelter ladies he considered fragile and dependent, while criticizing those who were independent and capable. Tonight, I played my role carefully. I turned his impulse to protect into a weapon and used his own bias against him. Selena didn't get the rapid change in power dynamics. She tried again to get me to react. "Olivia, don't be mad, it's all my fault," she said, her voice quivering with fake remorse, her eyes glistening with tears. She even glanced at Frank for support, the ideal appearance of hopelessness. I'd seen this display countless times before, women like her playing the part of the poor victim to get short-term compassion but lose long-term sympathy. I completely ignored her and went to Frank. I said, my voice breaking, "I think I understand why this happened, but we've been married for so long that I don't know how to move on with you anymore." I wiped away another tear and let out a shaky sigh. "You've deceived me with that." I stood, grabbed my bag, and walked hurriedly to the door. I didn't look back. The first lesson I ever learned about human duality came from Frank. In his youth, he dazzled everyone with his charisma and brilliance, but behind closed doors, he was a hypocrite. He looked down on a lot of people and things while pretending to be better than them. He only ever moved when he was sure he would succeed, like a cautious coward hiding behind a coat of charm. Tonight, my goal in that apartment wasn't just to confront his betrayal, it was also to see how things worked between him and Selena, and how they valued each other. I could see how much they valued each other and how they talked about their relationship most of the time. Most essential, I had to act like the grieving wife who was devastated by her husband's cheating. I parked by the ocean under a street lamp and rolled down the window after Act 1. The cool air helped clear my head as I pulled out my legal texts. Disrupting tonight's schedule would only throw off tomorrow's as well. The laws were hard to understand, and even though I read through the portions, my stomach hurt from the discomfort. I wanted to hit them both so badly after what I had just seen that I had to do something. It was so fragile that it took me 4 hours to settle down enough to drive home. When I got there, the room was finally quiet. Frank sat slumped on the couch, looking like he had aged 10 years since the guests left. After a single evening, his well-trimmed beard was now untidy, and his formerly sparkling white clothes were wrinkled and faded. The girl he loved turned out to be a fake, and he was crumpled, showing signs of losing his composure. Frank grumbled bitterly as he took a drink from his glass, which became stuck in his throat, causing him to cough uncontrollably for the first time. I witnessed the full weight of his deterioration. He looked weak and old, but that was no longer my concern. "Frank," I said softly. When I called his name, he halted and looked to me. I saw a little gleam of hope in his eyes, but I knew exactly what he wanted. But he had used up all of his chances. "Let him get a divorce," I urged. Frank's calmly moving forward and putting the divorce paperwork I had made earlier on the table in front of him. His gaze caught onto the neatly bound paperwork. He reached for them, his trembling hands flipping through a few pages. As he read the pages, his face changed from despair to rage. His voice was shrill with incredulity as he screamed, "For the years we spent together, I get only 20% of our—" Frank's face twisted as he read the last of the papers. He was so angry that he hurled them on the floor. With a dramatic sweep of his hand, he asked, "Why do I only get 20%? Gone?" A cultured, sophisticated man admired by many, what sat before me now was someone unidentifiable, angry, desperate, and rude, like a bomb waiting to detonate. I didn't answer his inquiry. Instead, I answered coolly, "Think about it." "There's nothing to think about," he roared. "This is not up for discussion." I didn't bother to respond again, no matter what he said. It didn't matter what he wanted to negotiate. Once it went to court, it wouldn't be up to him to decide. The next day, Frank went to the bank, then the property registration, and finally his insurance agent. The partition of assets is always the same, no matter how many locations Frank looked. It fit exactly what I had put in the divorce agreement. He spent the whole day running from one place to another. He went to the institutions, and by the end of it, he had his answer. But he didn't call me, he didn't come home, and he didn't go to Selena either. I didn't know where he was, but I had a fair idea of what he was doing. He was planning to dodge me. Frank liked to play this game of vanishing when things didn't go his way. Selena sent me a lot of texts, including insults, curses, and appeals. I tried to reason with them, but they were all desperate, and I ignored every single one of them. She was still holding on to the prospect of receiving what she wanted, even if her bombardment of communications contained bits of her genuine intentions. The $300,000 I promised her is what she wanted. The curses and threats simply highlighted how little power she actually wielded. I didn't have to answer her anymore. Frank and I ended up in court because he was so set on not divorcing me, which left me with no choice but to file again, even though I knew the process might take another 6 months. I wasn't planning to wait that long. Most instances like this don't go to court, they get settled outside of it. The moment we came out of the courthouse, I played my trump card like Don Corleone in The Godfather. I made Frank an offer he couldn't refuse. I put together a split-screen video. On the upper half was a clip of Frank and Selena's 10-minute escapade, crystal clear. On the bottom half was a longer 30-minute session depicting Selena and David in the same bedroom. The difference was striking. The video's title read, "The mistress of a newspaper editor who cheated on her husband turns to another lover because she wasn't happy." I sent it to Frank. Frank's face became pale as he viewed the tape, and his body started to shake with wrath. His lawyer saw how he was reacting. Frank pushed him away before he could see what had made him so angry. I watched the event unfold with interest. This lawyer wasn't very smart, and based on what I'd seen, his abilities weren't very good. They were probably about the same as someone who makes half of Frank's salary, which is a fantastic fit for my previous employment. "Let's settle this out of court," I told Frank. He started swearing a lot. His hands shook uncontrollably as he breathed heavily. Destroying a man's pride has always followed the same pattern. I turned and walked away without waiting for a response, allowing him to stew in his shame. A month later, I was officially divorced and my links to Frank were broken. I was finally free. But the cost of the conflict caught up with me, and I was really sick. My body and mind were too stressed out from tearing down the guy. He had hurt me so badly that I recognized it was a battle where no one wins and everyone loses. After I got better, I looked at Selena's financial statement and saw that I had been hurt. I used the same ID to profile her without any thought, and I sent her $300,000 right away. It wasn't shame or pity. It was a choice to cling on to a piece of humanity. To keep my heart from being absolutely frigid, I've discovered that keeping even a spark of sympathy is vital. I needed to remind myself, vengeance may bring resolution, but only empathy makes the soul whole. Frank left my life as swiftly as the ink dried on the divorce papers I signed. After that, I felt a strange quiet and silence that was both freeing and strange. My body was covered with battle wounds, and my memory replayed every action and every word exchanged in the last few weeks. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt empty. One night, I sat by the window and watched the city lights bounce off a glass. I had a glass of wine in my hand when I randomly checked Selena's account. She hadn't touched the $300,000 I sent her, and maybe she didn't know how to answer to someone who had played her, showed her off, and then left her with a lifeline. Maybe she was too proud to use it. So it didn't matter. For the first time in years, my future seemed like it was mine alone, unburdened by Frank's betrayals, his ego, or his expectations. I turned away from the window and lifted the piano cover I hadn't touched in a long time. The keys were hesitant at first, but then they played a melody that wasn't tormented by memories. The music rose, filling the room not with triumph or regret, but with something better. That was my story, a lesson in betrayal, justice, and the price of knowing too much. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If you want more real, raw stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss an upload. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place?